Welcome back to Weekend Report. Now, while the majority of the province is still hurting from the devastating effects of the KZN floods, the town of Ntuzuma is reeling after human remains were unearthed at their local cemetery. Skulls and partial skeletons lay along the roadside in a muddy rain while members of the community walked the streets. On Wednesday, funeral homes in KZN pleaded with families to postpone funerals due to the growing number of bodies at morgues, while burial homes have since reopened for business. Many are still struggling to find their loved ones. Now, to discuss the significance of burying the remains of family members in African customs and how this is affected by the floods, we are joined by academic analyst and cultural commentator, Professor Pitika Ntuli. Very good morning to you, Professor. Thank you for your time. It's a very difficult time for, a lot of people who have lost loved ones, but also very difficult for those who are seeing their loved ones unearthed by soil erosions after these terrible floods. Just talk to us about what is, or how the custom in African culture, what is the custom in African culture rather, if that is the case, and what do you do then with the reburial?
It's quite a very, very, very sad time that we are passing through, this moment. And what is very, very important here is that whenever there is a tragedy in a family, there's always a community that is going to support. When it is the entire community that is affected, then in the minds of people who believe also in their ancestors, a number of questions are actually being raised. Remember this, that when you travel on any motorway or any road, you see crosses actually on the road. Normally, white people would put a cross where their loved one died, so that whenever they pass there, they remember. With us as African people, you don't do that. You take a branch of a tree to where a person has died in order to collect the spirit of that person and bring it home to say, you are here on the N2, you died here, this. We are now passing through this street. We are taking you back to your own home where you are so that your spirit is united with the spirits of those that are alive as well as the spirits of your ancestors. Therefore, imagine then when you do not even know where the body is, where it can actually be found, you cannot even have that amount of closure or comfort. You are going to be absolutely, disturbed. But there are those that who believe, therefore, in Jesus Christ, particularly this weekend, which is also Easter, who might find some kind of a solace. But culturally, a lot of issues need to be brought to bear in order to assuage the sufferings and the grief of the people that do not even know, where their people are. It's a very, very, very horrific, things from a cultural perspective.
Absolutely, Professor. I mean, you make mention of those who believe in African spirituality who will not be able to get that kind of closure that they'll be looking for. What does that then do, and how do they work around that culturally if you don't know where the body is, where it could be, still trapped under rubble or perhaps washed away into the rivers or the sea?
What people normally would do will bring in their healers, their elders around the area where the incident has taken place and carry out a number of rituals in order to choose the spirit of the departed to join them so that they can again take it back for a symbolic burial where the other ancestors and other members of the family are buried.
Is there any risk of, there might be of, particularly looking at the bones that have and the bodies that have now resurfaced at the cemetery in Ntuzuma, that they might be buried or not taken by the correct families? And how do you guard from that?
Yeah, that's very, very difficult because, as you remember, even during COVID, when some people died and people could not be seen, people ended up burying bodies that are not theirs, therefore raising the wrath of the ancestors of the people who are buried in a very in a wrong in a place. So in these particular days, that if bones are actually being found and no one knows where it is, then there are also the issues of DNA that can be carried out if people are properly advised to know that this is our bone and therefore we have to bury that bone. So there's a lot also again which I think the medical, the autopsy, people could still actually do in order to assuage the question of the spirituality of those bones that could be found.
I mean, even the mourning process has now been affected. Some people will not be able to mourn as they culturally would. Would that be something that they'd have to relook at? How do they deal with something that is so tragic to them?
Yes, I mean, it's very, very, very tragic. And those things need to be looked at. In some other families, as I've heard, that there are about almost 6 members of the family that have disappeared. And then you cannot actually even begin to imagine, the trauma. I mean, last night I could not sleep. I had to write a poem. And in this poem, where I just imagined being one of the lost souls, that is actually in there. If you don't mind, I can read it for you. Winds gathered speed and howled. Rain felt like exploding mountains, and now I lie in a watery grave. My soul wanders in painful circles. My cries are unheard. My eyes travel home to see the pain painted on my family's face. Suddenly the motorway became a raging river. Cars turned into floating boats. I died with my children screaming, even as Jesus lies in his grave for speaking truth to power. Is it the wrath of the ancestors? Find me. With water in my lungs, I will swim and float in memory of those that loved me. Help me find my resting place in the womb of my beloved and betrayed land. That's how I just could imagine someone lost there, looking at their people, seeking the guidance of their own ancestors, and nothing happens.
Thank you so much for your time this morning, Professor Pitika Ntuli, academic analyst and cultural commentator, just making sense of the aftermath of those floods in KZN. Right, let's take